Hey friends, welcome back to the Big Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Tricia Brouk, founder of the Big Talk Academy, award-winning director, producer, and author. And this is episode 611. In this episode, I am talking with an amazing speaker and graduate of the Big Talk Academy, Charles Solis. Charles is the co-founder and director of the Reach Family Institute, a nonprofit organization that transforms children's lives by empowering parents to parent with the brain in mind. An internationally recognized expert on holistic brain development, Charles has guided thousands of parents on every social class worldwide. Pope John Paul II recognized his work with impoverished families in Venezuela as an example of the gospel of life. As a speaker, Charles has presented to audiences throughout Europe, Venezuela, and the US. He's a devoted family man and he speaks 4 languages and loves hiking, skiing, fly fishing, traveling, and cooking. This is such an incredible conversation. I'm so excited to share it with you. Let's do this. Charles, I am so excited to welcome you to the Big Talk podcast as a featured guest. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you very much, Tricia, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm super excited for this conversation. You have been inside of my community for several years, starting with the masterclass, where I'll never forget you sharing with our community this incredible pitch, which we can talk about momentarily. And then, of course, you went through the Big Talk Academy with us. But before we talk about all of
Yeah.
your work as a speaker and as a thought leader, I would love for you to take us back in time. What is your backstory? And you can go back as far as you want that has led you to this moment in time with me right now?
Okay. So I was a biology major in college, a pre med student who didn't get into med school, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life after having not gotten accepted, and decided that I would study physical therapy. I had been an athlete. I played lacrosse when I was in college, and I loved the whole idea of medicine. Uh, Biology, in particular, fascinated me, and so I thought, physical therapy would be a nice way to be involved in a medical career, and so I set my sights on that. And I was in the process of applying, actually, to the University of Pennsylvania, uh, to their master's program. And but in the meantime, I had to make some money, and so I decided that rather than landscaping, which mom and dad weren't thrilled about, having just having just gotten a college education, I decided that maybe I could get a job working in a physical therapy department, even if it was emptying the trash cans, just to kind of be around it. And so I was traveling around Philadelphia, uh, looking for jobs at rehab centers, and there are tons of them around Philadelphia.
Mm.
And I one day had stopped by a place, and they, like everybody else, they said no. And as I was leaving, I'm driving down the road, and a place on the side of the road caught my attention, and I didn't really see what the sign said, but but for some reason, this little voice in my head kept saying, "Turn around and see what that is. Turn around and see what that is." And so finally, I said, "Okay, I give up. I'll go back and see what it is." And I did so, and it was a place called the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential. Big name. And I thought, wow, that sounds really interesting. I wonder what they do there. And so I went in and went to the main building, introduced myself to the woman who was the receptionist. She was a lady in a wheelchair, and told her what I was interested in doing. And she told me that, well, here at the Institutes, we work with children who often are given physical therapy, things like that, but that's not what we do. And I thought, well, that's an interesting answer. So, how can I find out what you do? And to make a long story short, I ended up writing a letter to the director of the institutes. And a few months later, I was still cutting grass, and I received an invitation to go to the institutes to learn about what they were doing. And they had me follow a family that I think had come from Italy, I believe, with their child. And I spent a week there. Um, and at the end of the week, the director of the institutes asked to meet with me, and he invited me to train at the institutes. And I had fallen in love during that week with what they were doing there, and I I decided that I guess the University of Pennsylvania can wait. And that was the beginning of the story. Um, and A lot has happened. That was in 1975. It was
Wow.
that was a long time ago.
That is so
And
incredible. I'm gonna let you continue in just a moment, and I want to speak to how important it is to listen to the voice
mm,
when it comes.
yeah,
And when you started speeding yourself up, long story short, let me just say, and the listeners who are listening to the podcast and watching, you are such a wonderful storyteller, and you have such a velvety voice. You never have to, long story short, anything. I want you to just continue to stretch it out, keep talking, keep
okay,
sharing your story, because it's that important and it's that compelling. So let's speak to the voice in your head for a second, because
sure.
I think that's something that I want to hear from you about. And then I want to continue to talk about how from 1975, you really found your voice in this area of service. So let's
Mm.
two parts. So let's talk about the importance of listening to the voice.
Oh gosh, so important. Back then at the time, I thought, oh, it's just a coincidence. You know, um, but I have learned through a lot of different experiences over the years that that moment in time was whatever your beliefs, your spiritual beliefs might be. But for me, that was God literally literally turning my head around, and saying, "Wake up, pal. This is something that's important for you, and you need to pay attention to this." And that has happened many, many times over the years. I have come to. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. They're all God incidences for me,
Hmm.
and whenever I fail to pay attention to that voice and to let the voice guide me, then that's when I tend to run into trouble. Um, when I sort of surrender to the voice inside my head, and it's happened so many times now that now I don't know if trust is the right word to use, but I have faith in it, and it's a big leap. Not everybody gets that.
It is a big leap, and it does require trust and faith. And I think what you're pointing out, which is so important for our listeners, is that when you listen to that voice or the knowing or the calling, and you don't know where it's coming from or why it's coming, that is not your problem. Your responsibility is to follow it and to take action and to listen, because you are being guided and led to what is possible for you. And if you're not listening and you don't trust the knowing, you are missing out on your, going back to the Institutes for Human Potential, your fulfilling your human potential.
Precisely, precisely. I mean, uh, I, I thank God every day that I did listen to the voice, because it's made all the difference. To quote Robert Frost.
Yes.
Um, so yeah. So what was the second part?
So now that you've followed the voice from 1975, what happened? You
What
started
happened?
following this family from Italy who came in for support, and
Right.
talk about your expansion and you fulfilling your human potential.
So I had the privilege during the years that worked in Philadelphia. I had the privilege to to work with some extraordinary people, meet extraordinary world leaders. The institutes was a sort of a center uh, that attracted people who were sort of out of the box thinkers in terms of the field of rehabilitation and child development. So I got to meet some extraordinary people, but most importantly, I got the chance to work with thousands of incredible families, and I had lots of great opportunities when I was there. I was sent to work in a number of countries around the world, um, but perhaps the biggest opportunity that I was given, which was truly a gift, was in 1978. I was chosen to lead a project where we took a group of six young adults with special needs. Six young adults. The youngest was 18. The oldest was, I think, about 26 at the time. And they were all young people who had developmental difficulties. And we came up with this project as a way of trying to bridge a very sort of structured environment on campus with the very chaotic outside world. Um, One of the things that happens with brain injury, with neurological problems, is that structure becomes very important to progress. Okay, in much the same way that if you have a young child, uh, you know, young children need limits and they need to know, you know, what they can and can't do, and etc. And and if you can structure their lives in such a way that all of that is very easily understandable, then they do well. And this is particularly true with brain injury. And so we had these young people who uh, the school that we ran was almost like a military academy.
Mm.
Um, very specific time to wake up every day, very set schedule, and they did beautifully in that environment. But the problem with that is that when I mean, the ultimate goal is for them to graduate to real life, to go out to the real world. And the difficulty is that the real world isn't like that. And so we were trying to come up with some way to bridge that gap. And so the idea came up, sort of inspired by the work of Kurt Hahn, who was the guy who founded Outward Bound.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was a German educator, and he was also the founder of the Gordonston School in England, where you know Prince William. I don't know if Prince William, but the present King Charles is a graduate of the Gordonston School, and Hahn had some radical ideas about education, but for him, experiential education was critical, and our school was very much like that. So, sort of inspired by his ideas, we came up with the idea of through hiking the Appalachian Trail. Um, and Anyway, I was selected to lead the hike, and everybody thought we were crazy. Uh, Literally, almost everybody. And nobody had ever attempted anything like that before as a group, um,
Mm-hmm.
and especially a group of people with difficulties in terms of function. And so everybody thought we were nuts, and that was kind of just the inspiration that we needed. And we set out on the 8th of April of 1978 in Georgia, and September 15th, 1978, which was my 25th birthday,
Wow.
we reached Mount Katahdin in Maine.
That is
Uh,
so extraordinary.
more than 2,100 miles, and the first group of young people with developmental difficulties, special needs, to ever even attempt it, let alone succeed. As far as I know, no group like ours since has done it. Um,
Talk about being an influential voice and having an impact. Are you in
yeah.
touch with those 6 young adults who
You
are
know,
now adults?
I am not, Tricia. I'm in touch with two of them. Um,
Well, please send them this podcast so that they can hear you share the story and they can see your face glowing about the experience, because I think it would be wonderful for them to know just how impactful it was for you.
I will do so. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
And
was. It was huge. It was huge.
it's really huge. And it's just another reminder. We were talking about the voice, when the voices come and when you're given an opportunity to take a chance, to do something big, to take a risk, to try something that somebody else hasn't actually accomplished. We can't see what's possible because we only know what we know. But if
Right.
we continue to take a chance, take a risk, fulfill our human potential by saying yes and not knowing how, then
Right.
anything becomes available to us. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that from your own experience.
Well, I mean, I think it's very, very true. Again, if with so many people telling us that we were crazy to even attempt this, and keep in mind, this is 1978. Um, there were no cell phones. Uh, there was no social media. We did this almost in obscurity.
Yeah.
Um, there were some newspaper articles along the way, and at the very end, a reporter from the L.A. Times hiked with us on the final day of the hike. He climbed Katahdin with us, and but it was nothing like doing it today. Infinitely more difficult, um, and what can I say? I mean, they every single one of those young people for me is a hero. Um,
Absolutely.
they
Absolutely.
they did what everybody believed to be impossible, and
And you're part of that hero group, Charles, because you believed they could.
yeah, well, and in the end, that's really I think in the end that's what got us to the end, because there were a million times along the way when we could have stopped and nobody would have thought the lesser of us,
Mhm.
because it's an incredible challenge, and it's a lot of people think that wow, hiking that kind of a distance, that's a big physical challenge, and that's certainly true, but the mental and the emotional challenges are much much greater, and in particular doing the hike as a group. A lot of times people will decide to through hike either the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, one of the long distance trails. And like, two buddies will say, hey, let's do that. And they almost never make it, because they end up after, a week or two, especially if it's a week or two of nonstop rain and cold and whatnot, they end up ready to strangle each other, and
Yeah.
so to do it in a group is far more challenging, and
Yeah.
I think that in the end it was our belief in each other, and our belief in human potential that enabled us to overcome all of that, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we didn't have our problems. We didn't have our difficulties. That would be too much to expect.
Without question.
Anyway,
Let's talk a little bit about how you are influencing now by using your voice to speak about the work that you're doing now with brain development.
Sure. Well, you had asked before about when did I find my voice, and I don't know that I can think of any one particular occasion where I sort of went, wow, oh, people will listen to me. I think it was kind of there were several times along the way. Another big project that I did during all of these years was my wife and I did a project in Venezuela uh, where we created a project to bring our work with families to the poor of Venezuela. Um, we had been working in Venezuela with families, who paid us for consulting fees and whatnot, and it was a challenging thing. And at one point, we were speaking with good friends of ours who have a foundation there, and said to them, you know, it would be really nice to be able to do something with the poor here in Venezuela because they're everywhere. It's a country with a huge divide between wealthy and lower class, um, and if there's anything worse than being brain injured in a country like Venezuela, it's to be brain injured and poor.
Mm.
And so we came up with this idea to start a project. It began as a little pilot thing with just 3 families. 4 years later, and during that time, during these 4 years, the first 4 years, we volunteered all of our time. So we were doing it just to see what would happen. Well, 4 years later, we went from 3 children to 32 children and a waiting list of more than 500.
Wow.
And at that point, we had to make a decision. We either moved to Venezuela, or we empower Venezuelans to do what we did, and that's what we did. We created a training program, and over the next 10 years, we trained more than 200 doctors, therapists, and whatnot, and opened 34 centers all over Venezuela, providing services to the poor for free.
Who had
And
brain injuries
yeah,
specifically?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. Yes, yeah. Young kids with a wide range of difficulties,
Yeah.
and I think that one of the first times that I realized the importance of my voice was when I was doing that project in Venezuela. Um, that project led to us being invited to speak twice at the Vatican,
Oh my gosh.
um, and then I realized I really did have a voice. It was a big international conference, and and uh, and really
That's in
and really sort of one of the highlights of my career.
That's incredible, Charles. I had no idea you spoke at the Vatican, but let's be real. If you're speaking at the Vatican and hanging out with God in that way, you definitely have a voice. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyway, bringing it up to present day, we continue to do the work. I'm actually in conversations right now with our friends in Venezuela, to talking about reviving the project that because we essentially had to abandon the project 20 years ago, because of the political situation in Venezuela. It just became untenable.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that situation continues. But recently, we were approached by some people there who want to be trained by us, and so we're in discussions now about that. And a lot of things sort of in the works. We are working on a possible documentary about the Appalachian Trail hike, and And thanks to you, I've gotten the opportunity to hone my speaking skills. I'd spoken many times, but never spoken from memory uh, until I got involved with the Big Talk Academy, and and
And I,
that's a whole different ballgame.
speaking from memory,
Yeah,
it is. It is. How does that
yeah.
feel to you, knowing that you have that kind of a mastery over your performance skills?
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Um, I when I first started working at it, I thought, I'm never going to get this. But yeah, with your guidance and practice, it's getting better and better.
Well, you've always been a masterful, impressive storyteller, even the first moment that I met you. And it's been my privilege and pleasure to watch you hone that craft even more. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. This has been such an incredible conversation, and you are truly such an influential voice, Charles. Are you ready for some fast talk?
Sure. Go
All
for
right.
it.
All right. What's your favorite book?
Favorite book.
Hold, please. Nick, I'm in a session. Can you exit and come back at 2 o'clock? All right. We're going to cut that out. This is why Lacey emails y'all ahead of time and says don't come early.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna take that from
Okay.
the top. Charles, you are truly such an influential voice. Are you ready for some fast talk?
I am.
Amazing. What is your favorite book?
Um, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Oh, that's such a beautiful piece.
Oh yeah, changed my life.
Yeah. Who's your favorite speaker and why?
Favorite speaker. I think it's one of your proteges, Kristen Smedley.
I love Kristen. Yes, let's shout out to Kristen Smedley.
Shout out to
She's
Kristen Smedley. She is so inspirational, and talk about a good storyteller.
oh yeah, she's
Yeah,
funny and poignant and
yeah,
dramatic and very very impressive speaker. Thank you for that.
yeah.
How do you memorize since we just spoke about that?
Thanks to Andrew Bennett, another one of your people,
Yeah.
I now memorize by chunking it. I pretty much follow verbatim exactly what Andrew teaches about how he memorizes, and I find that works really well for me.
Yes, and I love what he talks about in the training about memorizing, and he also likes to treat himself to a shot of tequila. That joke makes me laugh every single time. I never get tired of it. All right, what do you do the day before you speak, Charles, in preparation?
I usually try to set aside a few hours to prepare. Depending on what it is. If it's a podcast, maybe do some research about the host. But just to prepare. And I always try to get to bed early.
Good advice.
Yeah, I'm not I'm generally an early riser, but I'm not good if I rise early and go to bed late.
Neither am I. Neither am I. What is the podcast you might be currently obsessed with?
I'm not a real huge podcast person, but there are some that I do follow. I really like a bit of optimism. Simon Sinek.
Nice. Awesome. And we'll
Yeah.
put all of this in the show notes, everybody. It has been such a pleasure to be in conversation with you today, Charles. Where can our guests get in touch with you?
They can get in touch at our website, which is www.reachfamilyinstitute.org. Um, Another website, www.brainfitkids.com. And uh, C. Solis Jr. at gmail.com.
All right.
Um,
We'll
I
put
think
all of
those are
this
pretty good. Yeah.
perfect. We'll put all this in the show notes. And if you are going to email Charles, Please be mindful of his inbox. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And to all of you who are listening, thank you for dropping in. We so appreciate your time and attention. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you get access to our latest episodes. Everybody, we appreciate you so much. If this episode resonates, share it, like, rate, review, do all the things so that we can help amplify and elevate more voices. Remember, everybody, your voice matters. Big love.